Partners, day 108. We're talking about the transiting gene key 5, which is about patience, impatience, and timelessness. Impatience is obviously the shadow of this gene key. Patience is the gift, and the siddhi, the highest frequency, the highest expression of this 5th energy, is timelessness. So we're going to break down what that looks like. I'm going to tell you the dates real quick on when this energy has been activated. December 3rd through December 8th of 2024. So we have today and tomorrow to continue enjoying this gene key. And I think it's a really cool one to look back on this week and notice what you saw coming up for you. Did you find yourself getting impatient in traffic, or did you find yourself having moments where time seemed to blend and you almost became unaware of what needed to be done? I've had so many of those moments, and they've been so juicy, and they feel like times where I've just been fully present and not needing or wanting to be anywhere other than where I'm at right then. And wow, what a beautiful expression of life when we can tap into that. And we'll hear more about that gene key as I move into reading from the Bible about it. The Gene Key Bible. And also I'm running a container of mentorship through the Golden Path, and I have a dear client and dear friend who has this as her life's work key. So it's a really special key to witness, express through her, and how much beauty and medicine her life has brought to her around the themes of the 5, and around rhythm, and around sacral power, and the idea of there being a time for everything. And my dear cousin, who I grew up with and spent many summers with, and she, even when she didn't live close to me, we would always spend time together because she would come in and we'd go to camps or, holidays. And we were just thick as thieves. And I think it was that Gemini-Sagittarius compatibility, but just the more I've gotten to appreciate this 5th gene key, I can really see how both the shadows and the gifts of my 20, which is my life's work key, can really enhance or trigger the gifts and shadows of the 5th gene key. And boy, did we have a lot of cat fights when we were growing up, me and my cousin and I. And we also had so many magical moments where we just genuinely got each other and were cool to flow and hang out. And we really had a nice natural rhythm most of the time, which is really cool to see now as an adult, and now to see through the lens of the gene keys. So let's get into it, shall we? 5th gene key, shadow of impatience. Yay! Oh my goodness. And it's really interesting too, because if you know a Sagittarius who's born under this gene key, they usually get quite triggered hearing the word patience, and they usually resonate very deeply. Excuse me. Excuse me. Where'd that come from? They usually resonate very deeply with the shadow of impatience. So let's get into it. Because the 5th gene key binds all living forms through these universal patterns, at its lower frequencies, it tends to display a deep distrust of life. So trust is going to be a really key word as we navigate through understanding this gene key. This manifests in human beings through the 5th shadow of impatience. We know that all human beings carry inside themselves a deeply ingrained fear of death. What you may not realize is that there are many layers around this fear. At the level of your personality, there is your outer fear, the prime fear pattern you absorb through the events of your childhood. This personal fear, in turn, gives way to the great collective fears, for example, the fear of change. At the deepest level, however, at the very precipice of awareness, lie the most ancient human fears, and this 5th shadow represents them. These ancient collective fears stem from one prime source, the fear that there is no underlying order to the universe. It's the fear of randomness. And I think people that have this 5 in a big way in their design and don't have some sort of spiritual belief or belief in God or a force that's organizing all of this suffer and struggle greatly. And I think they often turn to substances to help cope. Again, all just my personal experience. The ancient collective fears stem from one prime source, the fear that there is no underlying order to the universe. If the frequency of your genetics is tuned into this fear, no matter what you do to try to bring a sense of stability to your life, your body itself will never feel safe. This is in fact the normal state of consciousness of the mass of humanity. Within the 5th gene key lies the great secret of the timing of life. This gene key is about trusting or not trusting universal rhythm and natural timing. So impatience connects to distrust in life. Impatience, did I say that? Yeah. Repressive nature, pessimistic. It is interesting to consider that pessimism is really rooted in impatience. One of the key features of all repressive natures is collapse. If you have a repressive nature, then you have at some level moved through some kind of energetic collapse. Excuse me? Gosh, I always get such an endorphin release when I yawn, and it makes me laugh. When impatience drives a person to give up on life, it manifests as pessimism. Pessimism is nothing but the vestige of a complete loss of rhythm in one's life. It is an expression of a deep-seated fear that nothing can or will ever get better. Pessimism pulls one into a downward spiral, feeding on itself over and over until it finally ends in crisis or some kind of psychological and or nervous collapse. Reactive nature, pushy. The anger-based version of pessimism is pushiness. This is simply a different type of nervous system, and it reacts to impatience in an extroverted manner rather than collapsing inwards. Pushy people are constantly trying to force life's flow. This is why I mentioned the 20th shadow of superficiality really holds hands with this shadow super well, because it is distracted, hectic, and wanting to move on to the next thing in order to create some sort of feeling or shift. So we can see that here. These people also tend to manifest very inharmonious situations when natural timing is out of synchronization. And nothing seems easy, as though life were deliberately blocking one's path. Even so, these kinds of natures stubbornly push on, making the situation worse and worse until something or someone has to snap in order to release the pressure. You can see how resistance to the natural patterns of life eventually brings one to a turning point, both in the repressed or reactive natures. At such turning points, the only decision is really, do I want to begin living again? Whatever a person decides, it must be respected as part of the wider pattern of life. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let us move to the gift. Patience. Patience. Patience is about trust. These two words have very similar meanings. If you trust in life, you will trust life in every moment, even the challenging moments. And in doing so, you will always remain in the flow. As you live your life, you may notice many rhythms all around you, and it is the underlying presence of those rhythms that makes you feel stable. The most obvious annual rhythm can be seen in the shifting of the 4 seasons. If you are inwardly quiet, the passage of the seasons will make a very powerful impression within your psyche. It tells us some very deep truths, that spring always follows winter, for example. In your daily life, you will experience periods of winter where resources may be scarce, where you may feel lost for a while, or when you simply feel melancholy for no apparent reason. Such stages are built into life, and if you are patient, they change of their own accord, and they always reveal some magic. It is patience that has always been the true gauge and measure of the greatness of a person's soul. Finally, The gifts that come to the patient person are not only inner quietness, but also integration. When you wait and allow life to reveal its natural rhythms, you also come to realize that life knows best. Hindsight shows you repeatedly that life is constructed of beautiful and perfect patterns woven into wonderful tapestries, that your individual life follows such cosmic patterns. If you know how to wait calmly, you will realize that you are always a part of these wider patterns, and that they actually support you at all times, even the most challenging times. Above all, the gift of patience allows you to hear life's music. I love that sentiment. Oh. It tunes you into the subtle metronome behind your life. It allows you to breathe deeply into your belly and never feel trapped by your outer life situation. Patience smooths rough edges, keeps your heart and mind open, and makes life seem simple and easy. When you become impatient, even for a moment, you have stopped listening and trusting in the greater life. For these reasons, it is patience that has always been the true gauge and measure of the greatness of a person's soul. What a beautiful key! What a beautiful key. And we can see now, understanding patience in a new way, why it's so linked to timing, why it's so linked to trust. So let's go into the fantastical world and the mythical world of the siddhi. At the level of the fifth siddhi, patience itself is completely transcended and something wonderful happens. You as a separate entity cease to exist. Impatience and patience are two ends of the same spectrum, and as such they are rooted in the existence of time. There is a fascinating lesson to be learned from the spectrum of consciousness, and patience is the only key that allows you to see this lesson. All beings in life are waiting. Life itself can be seen as a waiting for death. We each wait for the future to reach into us, and as it does so, we see what life has planned for us. Consciousness dances through our vehicles in unique archetypal patterns. Sometimes we may find ourselves struggling in a shadow state, whilst at others we feel a deep sense of peace. Our lives are like the candle flame flickering in the winds of duality, impatience to patience, fear to trust, and back again endlessly. A siddhic state is different from this. In the siddhic state, you have jumped out of the game. You are not identified with the candle flame, even though it may go on flickering. You cannot talk in terms of patience or impatience because you cannot talk in terms of time or identity. This is the meaning of the siddhi of timelessness. Timelessness is the nature of consciousness itself. It is unborn and undying. Timelessness does not care whether the body is exhibiting patience or impatience. It simply is. Timelessness is thus the death of all fighting. Patience and impatience are not absolute states. They are the poles within life, experienced through human awareness. Only timelessness is an absolute state, a siddhic state. I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me. Do you know I also laugh because these are so fucking messy? These videos, I'm like yawning, sneezing, I feel like I'm all over the place. And I laugh because, of course, I'm human and I laugh at my desire to have perfection and for it to elude me in even the most ridiculous ways. And then in a way, that kind of makes me realize it's all perfect. It's all human, it's all perfect, and meant to be embraced. So here we are. Okay, the fifth siddhi, final thing we'll say on this. One thing is true to say. The more deeply your mind grasps the fact that you cannot do anything in life, the more you must begin to surrender both to your smaller genetic nature and your greater galactic nature. In the end, only timelessness will tell. That is the big so what. And I heard it described in the most beautiful way of timelessness emerges when you aren't aware you even need to be patient or are being patient. So when you're being patient or when you're summoning patience, you are aware of time. So you're embracing, this person is driving slow in front of me. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to accept this. You're aware of time, but you've decided to approach it patiently. You've decided to trust. This person's in front of me for a reason, slowing me down for a reason. I'm going to trust in that. Timelessness wouldn't even notice patience was required. There would be no breathing. There would be no extra relaxedness being embraced because you would already be existing in that space where all is well. There is no desires here almost because everything's happening all at once in sync. It's a really funny thing trying to put the Siddhic state into words. But when I mentioned over the past week that I've experienced moments of timelessness, it's been because my day didn't have, a few of my days recently didn't have time constraints on them, so that I didn't have appointments, I didn't have clients, I didn't have places I needed to be to get something done necessarily. So I created a timelessness space. And within those moments or those days, those afternoons, I experienced flow. And it was so blissful. It was so natural in a way. It made me wish for it more often. So that's the next goal, I suppose, or thought of how can I create more of those moments, and how can I recognize those moments are here more than I already currently do. So that's the Gene Key 5. I love you. Happy birthday if it's your birthday this week. And I'm excited to hear any feedback that you might have around this key if you've experienced something within it. And I'll see you tomorrow. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll see. I love you.